Hello there, and welcome to this new item of Bolier Talks Tech. Today I am here with a good industry friend of mine, Felix. Felix, can you please introduce yourself shortly?
Yeah, hi, I'm Felix Wetzel. I always struggle when I have to introduce myself, but I'm a human who currently lives in the UK but has lived in other countries beforehand, and I'm currently the Chief Revenue Officer of Pocket Recruiter.
Thank you so much. And where do your interests lie from a, let's say, a professional perspective?
For me, it's all about how can we create a better future, or how can we take the reality to the next level and use all of the tools that are already around us to, in a way, create a world that works better for everybody involved and has the people at its heart, at the people at its center. So in a way, you could say I'm a
Thank,
peopleist, not a populist.
thank you so much. I think that's a nice summary and pretty accurate, actually. Today we have picked a topic which is called autonomous recruiting. I think a lot of people have heard the word autonomous more and more over the past years and especially months and months. Can you start by explaining what autonomous actually means?
Well, if we take as an example autonomous driving, so an autonomous driving vehicle is a vehicle that can sense its surroundings and then can move safely without minimal or no human interaction, and it learns from all of the decisions that is made. And that's in a way what we understand from autonomous, that a machine or robot or program can, after it has been set up, can run decision making on its own and learn from it with limited input of the human by the human.
Right. And as always, we are a little bit behind in the recruiting scene. Always is of course by industry professionals. They always say we are a bit behind on other industries. Can you give us a good reason why we are behind?
Well, you know what? When I was working with JobSite, our CTO Graham Potts then always told me it's very easy to match properties, for example, because it's structured data. So it's very clear that you have, for example, I don't know, 4 rooms, a bathroom, a garage, and a garden, and it's very easy to match that. And it's the
Hmm.
same with, for example, new cars. It's the same with travel. When I'm looking for a hotel, I'm very clear of what I'm giving, and it's very structured data. The problem was that at a time, or until now, until recently, technology couldn't deal with unstructured data, because if you think about a CV, if you think about a job description, all of the different words that I use, you need to understand tables, you need to understand bullet points, you need to understand temporal aspects. So when has somebody done it? And you need to also understand not only the skills and experiences, but also the activities. So, for example, and you often have this when you, for example, let's say search for a CFO and you get the an assistant to a CFO instead of just CFO results. And so, what happened now is that the data, or the technology now can deal with unstructured data, which means now we can also match recruitment, or people. We can match people to jobs
Hmm.
and people to people. But also, in another industry example where it works is, for example, used cars, because used cars obviously have also enormously amount of different specifications, and that's why it was always difficult to match used cars as well. And technology also made a big progress there.
And is that the, let's say, the sole reason, or are there other, let's say, sub reasons why as an industry we might lag a little bit behind?
Well, it's obviously always easy, but it's always easier if you, or in our mind, in the human psyche, it's always easier if you're matching things, because what we don't want to believe is that actually we can also match and categorize and classify humans. And now and that's what you needed at the beginning with structured data. You needed to be able to classify or to tag people and put them into certain buckets so that you could quite easily match them. This is now not needed anymore. In a way, now we can see the human behind it and match them to the job that they want. Now, we have seen recently, since COVID, a real increase in interest in AI matching technology, and it's very much driven
Hmm.
because people are now saying, "Well, actually, we had to disrupt, we had to disrupt our model anyway, so let's just go the whole hog." And I guess that's another reason, right? When you have a business model that works, or that kind of works, and it gives you some, you get revenues, you get a good profit margin. Why disrupt it? How can you
Right.
convince your CFO that I have a working business model that gives us good profits, but now I want to completely disrupt? And let's be sure, when we say disrupt, this means we ultimately say kill it, yeah, and destroy it, and replace it with something completely new, which I believe will be good, and an Excel spreadsheet looks really, really great. And I think that's the hindrance, whereby now with COVID, obviously a lot of businesses are on their knees. A lot of businesses are looking at it and they're now saying, whoa, actually let's just do it now, because we anyway, our revenues are low, our profit is now a loss, so we might as well do it. And surprisingly, a lot of companies already had their plans in their drawers for automation and for AI, and they've just pulled it out.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a couple of companies who have said, okay, we had planned to automate our recruiting processes within 2 years' time, and we've just been told by the board that we should do it now. Right, we have until October to do it. So that obviously helped speeding it up. Then the other thing, which is quite interesting, is but also again because of COVID, where a lot, obviously, talent acquisition departments have been minimized, right? So if requisitions gone down to 1/3 of what they were pre-COVID, the talent acquisition teams were also minimized by the same amount of number. But then, especially in the Anglo-Saxon sphere, we obviously had an enormous amount of increase in applications. And the remaining talent acquisition specialists and experts couldn't deal or can't deal with the amount of volume. So they're now looking at, shall we bring back a person, or do we use technology to help us?
Right.
So
So I understand there's been some technological breakthroughs. There's more urgency from a business perspective. There's less to lose from a business perspective. So let's do it now. There's also more use cases in the talent acquisition scene where this is now just necessary. Otherwise, you just can't deal with whatever you have to deal with right now. So
exactly, and I think the other interesting thing to sorry, René, to interrupt you there. The one other interesting thing that I always think is always the external environment that drives and defines if something will work or not. Right, so we always believe that we are super managers, right? There's this myth of the super manager, that regardless of the external environment, regardless of the dynamics that are happening, I'm such a great manager, I can make it work anyway. And I think a lot and most influence on business actually happens from the external environment, and we have no control over it. But it influences then sudden breakthroughs and sudden take-ups of disruptive technologies, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I was, for example, recently talking to a billion-dollar SaaS business, and they see now suddenly massive growth in Germany because all managers have realized, oh, it does actually make sense to go into the cloud. It's you can do whatever marketing and sales you want, but you can't work against those kind of forces. So I can imagine that those who are into this item or watching this item are saying, okay, cool, I understand where you are going, but give me a little bit more concrete examples. So can you give some examples of how, let's say, the experience and the workflows of the candidate and the recruiter will change by the use of autonomous recruiting, and how that will then impact, let's say, the outcome and experience for them?
So what we see, so I can give you real world examples, what we see now from our clients, that we see that they are having at least a 20% capacity release, which means they save 20% of the time that they normally spend on their recruiting activities, especially on sourcing, screening, sifting and shortlisting and doing the first engagement method. That's the minimum that you see. But this goes up to 50-60%, which means that obviously they suddenly have time, instead of going through just, lots of CV databases and loads of applications. They have now time to actually focus on what's more important, which is the human to human interaction. Sorry. And the second thing that we see, which, every time it brings a smile on my face, is that for example, there's a great recruiter who works for a massive bank in Belfast, and he's looking for Java developers. He has been doing this for 3 years, and Poker Recruiter has found him candidates within 4 weeks that he hasn't never seen before. and he could place straight away, right? So not only do you give them it, do you save time, but we're also bringing back a higher quality, or let's say not higher quality. Actually, that's wrong. We're in a way overcoming the selection bias. Instead of building the the fastest shortlist, is about building the best shortlist. Now that's one part of it, but then you can in a way go further, because if we're completely honest about it, what autonomous recruitment will do is it will create a direct interaction between the candidates and the hiring managers. Right, so recruiters will go into completely different roles, and we can talk about this a little bit later. But just to answer this question, how will that help? Now, over the last 20 years, at least as long as I have been in the recruitment industry, we have seen all of those different researches that shows us what candidates really want, right? They want to speak with a hiring manager. They want to get feedback really fast from the applications, the majority within the first 24 hours. They want to know, they don't want to have a recruitment process that takes around 6 weeks or 8 weeks or even longer. They want to have fast feedback, and that's we also use with Amazon, right? We can track our parcels, we can see where everything sits. And we also know from hiring managers that they actually want to have a short list of good candidates. They don't necessarily want to have always the back and forth with recruiters in between, because they're just interested in give me the great candidates that can work for me. And so what we will see, and what we're seeing already, is a more positive impact on candidate experience, and that comes back through some of the surveys that our clients are running, because for example, we expose the AI also to candidates, which means as a candidate, instead of having to do my search, because we also have to think that candidates, as a candidate, I might know my job description or my job title and my location and my industry that I work in. Instead of having to search and type in Chief Revenue Officer, I don't know, Europe, I just now upload my LinkedIn profile, and the AI can show me which jobs I'm actually best matched for based on skills, experience, and activity, not because this is the job title that I'm having. So I can also explore now different areas that I've never done. So in a way, there is this whole conversation about transferable skills, but now this transferable skills part is actually becoming a reality and can be done for every single person. I personally believe it becomes really, really important going forwards when we have a certain, job families going to disappear or being automated, but there are skills and experiences in these that the people have who worked in these industries that can be used somewhere else, but they just don't know it. And we're just putting too much emphasis in saying, hey, Felix, I know you don't, your industry has disappeared, but you can work somewhere else. Well, help me, because I don't know where. Because I've worked for this industry for 20 years, and that's exactly what's going to happen. The other thing that we see as an example is that it can be used much more for internal mobility. That's again something that came with COVID, where people are much more now looking at how can I use Pocket Recruiter or other systems like Pocket Recruiter with AI at looking at what skills do I have internally and how can I deploy them differently. So how can I move people horizontally? How can I use it for succession planning? And then we saw that a lot. So companies use Pocket Recruiter to identify who to furlough, who to bring back to furlough when, and also who to, for example, put at risk, because they didn't rely and didn't need to rely anymore on the manager saying, okay, Felix will protect René because they're good buddies. But it's actually, there's a machine who tells me who are the best people for that specific role, even if they might not be working in that department at the moment. So in summary, right, it will help everybody. That's my firm belief, and it especially will be great for candidates, and it will help us help people find roles that they don't even know that they can do already. And that's for me, the non plus ultra.
Right. Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot of great stuff here, and I'm very happy you're taking this further than just usual, quicker shortlist than usual, because you don't have to manually source anymore. One interesting one I heard from you is the dynamic between recruiters and hiring managers, right? Amongst my customers, I have many recruiters. Amongst my friends, I have many hiring managers. And typically, they both hate each other quite a lot. And both have good reasons for hating each other, let's be honest. So I'm very interested to see how this plans out in the future. One thing that I'm also really interested in is what you said about, let's say, career pathing, as I would summarize it, right? So helping candidates understand what their path could be, what also what courses or skill, how they could upskill themselves to be a better fit for the market, certain companies, employers, and so forth. Helping recruiters, managers, companies understand actually the skills they have in-house and how they can move people from A to B, and so forth. So I'm hearing a lot of promising stuff. At the same time, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of possibility here, but at the same time, we both know that making technology successful at a large scale is very, very hard, right? So what is, if you look into the next 5 years, what is going to be the biggest barrier or the biggest struggle in getting all of this, let's say, up and running?
So yeah, that's a very good point, René. I call it middle management sabotage. Because you have a layer of people. You referred to it with your SAS example in Germany beforehand, which are middle managers or people with a middle management mindset. And by that I mean people who lose influence and lose control. And these are always the people who stop progress. And in a way, the human there is the biggest hurdle and challenge for progress. And you said it has to do with lots of technology. And let's just remember when social media first came back, right? And then all of the top management was fine. Yeah, just use social media. The rest of the organization was fine. It was just using social media, and they knew how to use social media. The majority of them knew how to use social media. In comes the middle management, or the people with middle management mindset, and saying, we need to write social media guidelines. Sorry, we need to write social media policies. And that was actually done instead of kind of trusting the people and saying, look, it's very easy, about social media. Remember when you put something online, what that means and how if other people read it, it never gets deleted. And, until now, I believe the majority of people are absolutely fine with it. Yes, you have a couple of extremists out there, and they obviously get more and more air time than anybody who says something more sensible. And it's the same again with the new technologies like AI. You have a lot of people who are saying, why should we do this? And the majority of that is because they lose control. Take it, for example, that in a way, if we talk about the candidate to the hiring manager, right? So there's a hole in the middle where we're challenging an entire industry and saying actually, you need to evolve. So that's one big part. The second big part, obviously, is as humans, we are often, we love our habits. We don't like change. And now it's time to change. And that's again driven now with the external environment and all of the changes that are coming with COVID. I think it's an accelerant and a catalyst for, speeding up or accelerating all of the underlying changes that are coming anyway through the digital revolution that we just didn't want to see, and we didn't believe that this would be true. And then my last point is that, and I see that more with staffing agency or recruitment agencies, and I guess it comes back to the middle manager mindset, is that you have a lot of people in leadership positions who don't have a game plan. They don't have a playbook. And I often compare the two, for example, football. If you are, I don't know, if you're a manager like Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp, some of these top managers, they have a very clear playbook, and this is the way their clubs play. So when they join a new club, they kind of say, this is what we do now, that's how we change it. Or when they learn something new, when new technology comes in, they recruit people or players in accordance to it. And if you don't play in accordance to their game plan, then you don't have any time, or you have no space in that team. Mm-hmm. Now, what we see often in recruiting teams is that the leadership doesn't really have a game plan. So they're not saying, how do I have to change my underlying operating model so that it goes better? They kind of throw in some technology and saying, here, recruiters, use this technology, it's great. But they're not, in a way, baking it in. They don't have a vision of how this has been used, and they don't have maybe the strength of pushing it through when their top biller says, nah, I don't like using it. I prefer to go in my usual ways. And then they say, okay, you don't need to do that because you're the top biller. Once the top biller says he doesn't need to do it, then the top biller says to his entire team, you don't need to use this. We're just continuing as we did before because that's we did it. So this whole lack of leadership is a key component of why we often don't see progress, and we just need people who are now taking this and pushing this through. And I have to say, I know we are often knocking the industry, but there are some really, really great and talented people who are really pushing progress, pushing AI and automation forward in a really sensible way and with real clarity. And they're building these blueprints, they're building these playbooks, and more often they're not the people that are currently in the limelight.
So, Felix, I'm sure that if I ask you or one of those industry leaders, is there a future for the human recruiter? You say, absolutely, yes. So my question here is not, is there a future, but what is that future? What are, let's say, the strategical parts of recruiting that will be their role for the next 5 to 10 years? How can they prepare or upskill themselves to be able to be successful in that role?
Yeah, so one of my favorite quotes is that the future has an ancient heart. And I believe that's the case, that in a way, the way that we recruited, I guess, before job boards came along, these recruiters who really focused on the human and really kind of focused on matching, humans and understanding also the candidates' real motivation and drivers will thrive in this environment because, they have more time to focus on this. So I think there will be still this place for the recruiter or for these, let's say, these kind of recruiters, or you can call them candidate concierge, or however they want to be called. But I believe firmly that there's a role in any organization for them. The difference is that at the moment we have a lot of recruiters who believe that they need to speak right at the start with any candidate. But if we look at the candidate research from Bolier or others, that's actually not the case, right? As a recruiter, and this research has been around for 20 years. As a candidate, I only want to speak with the recruiter when I am ready for the recruiter. I'm actually more happy to speak with a robot through a chatbot right at the beginning and ask my questions that I need to know to understand if I'm the right person for this job. So I think what changes is where recruiters will get into the process. They might not get into the process right at the beginning, but further down the hiring funnel, when I, as a candidate, I'm ready, I know I have got a chance of a job, and now I'm interested in talking about with the human about it. And then there's other roles that I believe become more and more important, or that we see become more important. There's obviously, there's AI. What we see is like that our clients, what they do is, instead of every recruiter using Pocket Recruiter, they have an expert team, and they are becoming AI coaches. They're looking after and defining candidate quality, and they're pushing continuous innovation. They're using Pocket Recruiter, and they're using also other tools, right? They're now looking at how can I build a tech stack that in a way creates as much automation as possible. The classical recruiter is then sitting further down. They don't need to search through LinkedIn anymore. They don't need to use all of these different tools. They get in a way a short list of relevant and interested people. They might be in the ATS, and they can be picked up at this stage. So they don't, and because that's one of my key points also for anybody, don't try to out-robot the robot, right? Somebody like Pocket Recruiter is much faster and much better in, for example, sourcing, sifting, shortlisting candidates and finding the candidates that you haven't found yet than any human can be, because it's a robot, right? The robot is the better robot. So let's not try to focus on this, but let's focus on our unique human qualities. And these unique human qualities for me are also creativity. So at the beginning, like, how do I actually attract people to my organization? How do I attract people to talk to me? How do I engage with them? So I think we'll need to have some really good recruitment marketing people. And copywriters, that can tell stories. Now, I know that everybody says there's already great recruitment or employment marketing people. I think the majority of people in employment marketing roles are employment advertisers that don't understand branding, and they don't understand, the whole 4 Ps and all of the aspects of marketing. So I would really encourage you to focus on bring in some real specialists in here. But that's a different topic. And then I think, like we see in other roles, you will need to have product managers. You will need to have, UX designers, UI designers who help permanently tweak and permanently figure out how everything works. And then finally, I think there's a big role also for integrators, right? So let's say you have 4 great point solutions. So somebody has to think through this and saying, how do all of these systems talk to each other? How does the data flow through it? And I think that's a key task for me for a recruiter, because I have seen, and no disrespect, but I have seen systems people, or systems architect, solutions architect, architecting a solution for a recruiting team. And it's then delivered to the recruiting team, and the recruiting team goes, well, we can't use this. This is not linked to reality. So I think it's a key part for any recruiter to be involved in this. And I think there's loads of recruiters, and I could name several for all of those different roles that are doing an absolutely fantastic job and somehow transitioned over into these kind of roles. And I think it's really important that we're bringing this talent acquisition, talent attraction, talent management, recruiting experience into all of those different roles. Otherwise, we create solutions that are not working for the problems that we're trying to solve. And a lot of people that we talk, that we work with POG Recruiter, where we really see recruiters, they're coming to us and saying, I want to be the super user, or they're saying to their bosses, I want to be the super users. And they see themselves transitioning much more into like away from day-to-day recruiting to, I want to be the one who understands it, who pushes the technology out, who really works with the AI and trains it and pushes the continuous innovation. And these people are, in every organization, and that's what excites me when I'm working with them, and when you're working with these kind of people.
You definitely made your point, Felix. You have definitely made me way more excited than I already was about the future of recruitment, and more importantly about the way, let's say, the world will be working in today, but also in the future. Any final thoughts or things you want to share with our audience?
Well, for me, it's really about, change can be easy, change can be fast. So don't fret, don't be afraid for it. Just jump in and embrace it and make it happen. And remember, the future has an ancient heart. So, right, it's all about people to people. And that's the key thing for me, why AI and automation will be so great, because finally we don't need to out-robot the robot. We can focus on human interactions and human relationships.
Thank you so much, Felix. And thank you for watching Bolier Talks Tech. See you again soon.